California Department of Insurance?
I was the executive secretary for the public relations officer.
And finally, in your employment at the DMV?
I worked for as an office assistant too.
I'm sorry, office assistant?
Two.
Two being the level,
That's
I
correct.
take it, not to somebody. And are you still presently employed at the Department of Motor Vehicles Driver Safety Division
Yes, I am.
on a full-time basis?
That's correct.
In that same capacity as Office Assistant 2?
That's correct. I'm designing a computer program at the moment, but I'm still in the office assistant 2 position.
Earlier I asked you some question about postgraduate education, and you indicated that you'd had some training courses in the banking field. Where did you receive that additional training? Was that here in California or down in Texas?
In Texas.
And was that in connection with your employment at Heights Savings and Loan?
That is correct.
How long of a training period did you have there?
They were just a matter of day courses or 2-day courses.
Do you have any additional formal training in connection with any of the other employment that you had that we've just reviewed?
Not that I can think of.
Are you presently licensed to drive in the state of California?
That is correct.
Has your driver's license ever been suspended or revoked for any reason?
No, it has not.
Do you hold any other professional or any professional licenses, certificates, or registrations?
No, I do not.
Mr. Walsh, are you presently, and I mean today, under any medication?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Do you, even though you may not be under medication today, do you regularly take medication at the present time in your life?
Not at the present time.
I understand that you are presently having a diagnosis of AIDS or an AIDS-related disease.
That is correct.
Does your present medical condition in any way, to your knowledge, in any way impair your memory?
No, it does not.
Mr. Walsh, what specifically is your diagnosed medical condition, if you can describe it to the best of your knowledge?
I've been diagnosed with Kaposi sarcoma.
And in the AIDS category of diseases, what designation does that carry?
It places me as an AIDS patient. I have also had a bout with thrush.
I'm sorry?
I've also had a bout with thrush.
Is that under control at the present time?
That is correct.
When were you first diagnosed as being an AIDS patient?
In February of 1988
And where were you at that time?
in San Francisco.
And what medical facility first diagnosed you as an AIDS patient?
UCSF.
Prior to that time, had any healthcare practitioner suggested to you that you might be an AIDS patient or suffering from any of the diseases within the AIDS syndrome?
No.
When you were first diagnosed as being an AIDS patient, were you in the UCSF hospital for medical reasons?
I went in for an examination.
And what was your...
I was not in a hospital. I mean, I was in a doctor's office.
All right. What was the nature of the condition that you were suffering at that time that caused you to go in for an examination?
I found a KS spot.
And where did...
What?
KS, carpososarcoma spot.
Where did you find that on your body?
On my leg.
And were you attuned at that time to the fact that such a spot might be a precursor of a carcinoma?
Yes, I was.
What was the name of the doctor that examined you at UCSF?
I'm afraid I don't remember.
And what was his diagnosis? Simply that you had carpososarcoma?
He did take a biopsy and diagnosed as carpososarcoma.
In diagnosing your condition at that time as carpososarcoma, did the doctor discuss with you the relationship of that diagnosis to AIDS?
He did state that it was an AIDS-related disease.
Did you have any other doctor examine you in San Francisco at or about that time, basically for a second opinion to determine whether or not the diagnosis that that doctor gave you was accurate?
I don't know if he had the biopsy done by another doctor or not. I'm unaware of that. I only saw him.
I think the import of my question is, did you yourself on your own go seek out another opinion from some other physician?
No, I did not.
Did the doctor that examined you at UCSF at that time in February of 1988 prescribe any course of treatment?
In February 1988, no.
What did he tell you to do, if anything?
He told me that there was not any treatment for KS at that point.
Could I ask you to speak louder?
Sure.
Did you at some subsequent time consult with a physician or other healthcare practitioner in the San Francisco area to seek out advice regarding whether there was any possible treatment for your condition?
They gave me no treatment possibilities for KS, although I did see other doctors for an experimental program with pentamidine to prevent me from coming down with pneumocystis pneumonia.
And did they prescribe medication for you in that respect?
I did have a couple of treatments of the pentamidine late in the spring.
Can you spell that, pentamidine?
Pentamidine, I believe.
And where was that administered?
That was also administered at UCSF.
Do you know the name of the doctor that treated you there?
I'm afraid I don't.
Do you know the names of any of the doctors that saw you or treated you at UCSF?
I'm not aware of what their names were at that point.
During the time that you remained residing in San Francisco, did any other doctor prescribe any other course of treatment for you with respect to your medical condition?
No.
Did any of the doctors that you saw in San Francisco at UCSF or otherwise give you any prognosis with respect to the course of your illness?
No, specifically, no.
Did any of the doctors that you saw at UCSF give you any prognosis with respect to probable life expectancy?
As far as I'm aware of, they did not give me any specifics on that. They were more in the process of trying to give me treatment plans. I don't think that they really had any specific suggestion to me at a time level.
Okay. In respect to treatment plans, you've indicated you had some pentamine treatment in the spring. Were there any other treatment plans that were discussed with you during the time that you were still in San Francisco?
They did discuss putting me on AZT.
And what is that?
It's a drug that apparently slows down the HIV virus.
Was that ever prescribed, or was that simply something discussed with you?
It was discussed. I refused it.
And what was the reason you refused that
Because it was
suggested treatment?
It was an experimental drug at that point, and I was not certain that I was ready for it.
Were there any other possible plans for treatment or possible suggested treatment that was discussed with you while in San Francisco?
None that I'm aware of.
What was the reason for your relocating from San Francisco to San Diego in the summer of 1988?
I decided to move to San Diego to place myself in a less stressful situation.
You moved to San Diego in July of 1988, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, when you say you decided to move to San Diego from San Francisco to be in a less stressful environment, what was the source of the stress, if you will, that you were encountering in San Francisco?
I was burying over 5 friends a week.
I'm sorry.
I was burying over 5 friends a week.
These friends or associates that you had in San Francisco who were dying, were they all dying of AIDS-related illness?
That is correct.
Did any of those friends who died during the period of time that we're concerned with here in the spring have the same type of medical problem that you had, that is Kaposis sarcoma?
I'm aware of others that had died of Kaposis, or with Kaposis.
Prior to your decision to move to San Diego, did you have friends or acquaintances that resided here in San Diego?
I had made acquaintances when I made the decision to move down here. Did not, only a matter of months before I moved down here. I came down to check out the place first.
And Mr. DeBelka came to San Diego at the same time you did?
He moved down shortly before.
Ms. Walsh, one thing I forgot to ask you earlier just regarding your background, but I wanted to make sure I covered it. Have you ever been married, sir?
Yes, I have.
And when were you married?
1973,
For what period of time?
6 months.
And to whom were you married?
Her name was Carla. last name at the moment. Sorry.
Right. How soon we forget.
It was hopefully.
Yeah.
I don't know right now.
At least for a period, it was Carla Walsh, wasn't it?
That's true. It was Carla Walsh for a period.
That's probably fair.
Her family wasn't very pleased with me, so we didn't have much association with the family.
Was that in Kansas or in Texas?
It was in Kansas City, Kansas.
Did that marriage end by divorce?
Yes, it did. Actually, it was an annulment.
Any children of that marriage?
No, there were not.
Any other marriages?
No.
Prior to your moving to San Diego in the summer of 1988, had you at any time prior to that had a history of back problems, back ailments, back pain?
Yes, I had.
What generally, give me a synopsis of your history of back problem?
I remember having strain or and stress-related incidences prior that I had gone to see a chiropractor about.
In San Francisco?
No, this was in Kansas. I don't remember ever seeing one in Texas, but I do remember in Kansas.
All right, just so I understand, then we're talking about somewhere back in the 70s?
That's correct.
Do you know approximately, are we talking like just before you were married, before you went to college, or after, or can you place it in time any better than that?
Probably while I was in college.
And how long a course of treatment did you have with a chiropractor in Kansas?
Just one treatment incidence.
One visit?
That's correct. Over a 3-year period, probably several of them.
Okay. Several different chiropractors, or always the same one?
Well, I imagine it was probably with my family's chiropractor at that point, so probably was the same one.
Do you recall that doctor's name?
No.
Was it in Kansas City?
I believe it was in Concordia, Kansas.
Concordia. What was the nature of the back problem? Low back, high back?
Low back.
Radiating pain down in the legs? Or?
That's correct.
Did your visits to the chiropractor in Kansas relieve your pain?
Yes, it did.
In Texas, any recurrence of back problems?
Not that I remember.
How about in Louisiana?
No.
San Francisco?
None.
Did you see any other chiropractor other than the chiropractor that you've just described prior to moving to San Diego?
No.
You indicated on your on the confidential information form that you filled out at Dr. Sismanik's office that you had been involved in an automobile accident or a truck accident in 1984. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And where did that occur? In San Francisco?
In San Francisco.
What, if any, injuries did you receive in that accident?
I bruised the duodenum.
And did you require any other injuries?
Just scrapes and abrasions.
Did you require any medical treatment for the injuries you received in that accident?
I was taken to the hospital
Which
and
hospital?
released. Let's see, San Francisco General. Any back-related distress from that particular accident? No.
And I take it no treatment for your back following that accident?
No.
Any other occasions where you just simply suffered some back pain or discomfort that you can recall during the period of time that you lived in San Francisco?
Not that I'm aware of.
During the time that you were in San Francisco, from the time that you were first diagnosed as an AIDS patient until the time that you moved to San Diego, so I'm really talking about that 4 or 5 month period between, I think it was February of 1988 and July. Can you describe your general physical and medical condition?
I was diagnosed as an AIDS patient and had located one lesion, and otherwise my health was basically good.
Were you suffering any physical disability? I mean, in terms of restrictions on your ability to perform normal daily functions?
None whatsoever.
Were you suffering any headaches or backaches or leg aches or any other kind of discomfort?
None that I can remember.
Were you suffering any reduction in your energy level or things of that nature?
No.
Were you having any difficulty with sleeping or any of your other normal bodily functions?
I'm sure I had some sleep disruption.
Do you associate that more with the mental stress or with physical discomfort?
It was mental stress.
Any other restriction or disruption of your normal daily functioning during that period of time?
None whatsoever.
In what ways did the emotional or mental stress that you were feeling during the time that you were still in San Francisco manifest itself?
Usually with sleep deprivation.
Any other manifestations of the stress that you were suffering during the time that you were still in San Francisco that you can recall?
None that I can recall.
Is there any, did it have any debilitating effect on your ability to perform your work functions in San Francisco?
None whatsoever.
Any debilitating effect on your social relationships?
None that I can think of.
Did you at any time while you were in San Francisco, before moving to San Diego, seek any psychological or psychiatric counseling or treatment?
No, I did not.
Never saw a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anyone else to consult with you or treat you for the stress that you were feeling?
No.
Were there any agencies, agencies of either the state or local government or private agencies relating particularly to your community or to the AIDS or patients with AIDS diagnosis to whom you were referred for counseling?
None for counseling, no.
Were there any that you were referred to for treatment other than those that you've already described?
No.
Did you commence your employment at the Department of Motor Vehicles shortly after you arrived in San Diego?
I was hired prior to moving down here.
And you started your employment, I take it then, coincidental with your arriving in San Diego?
That's correct.
The events that we're concerned with here with respect to your going to the office of Dr. Sosmanic began, as I understand it, on or about August 2 of 1988. When, prior to August 2 of 1988, did you first become aware of any problem with your back, that is, back discomfort, back pain, other indicia of a back ailment that caused you to see Dr. Sysmanek?
I noticed on the Saturday prior to that I was having some lower back pain, and then that Sunday I had fallen asleep on the floor at my apartment, and when I woke up I was under a great deal of pain.
That was on the next day?
That's correct.
Were there any activities or events in your life that occurred prior to that Saturday when you first noticed the back pain that you felt contributed in any way to the onset of the back pain?
Well, I had been spending most of the month unpacking, and also had been under stress from the move.
Just so we can deal with dates appropriately, I'm just looking at one of the slips of paper out of the documents that are in Exhibit B. I'm looking at a calendar for August. As I believe the records indicate, your first contact with Dr. Sysmanek's office was, I think, on August 2. The preceding Sunday would have been July 31, Saturday, presumably July 30. Are those dates consistent with your memory as to when you experienced the onset of the back pain?
Yes, sir.
Prior to your making any contact with Dr. Sysmanek's office, did you attempt to contact any other chiropractor in San Diego?
No, I did not.
And am I correct in recalling that you had not had any contact with any chiropractor in San Francisco before moving?
That's correct.
How was it that you came to know of Dr. Sysmanek? Why was it that you called his office?
His office is located...
Excuse me. Objection compound. You can answer it as well as you can.
His office was located close to mine, and I had walked by it.
Close, you say close to yours, close to where you worked?
That's correct.
You worked at the DMV office up back behind the old Sears store?
I work at the DMV office on Normal Street.
On Normal Street.
The Sears store wasn't there when Robert came to town.
That's true.
He doesn't know that reference.
There was a big hole there.
That's true. And so you simply had seen Dr. Sysmanek's chiropractic office. You were aware of its existence by having walked past it.
Yeah, it's a small building with a very large sign on it.
Okay. Had you in any way had anyone refer you to Dr. Sysmanek? Had anyone else who had been a patient of Dr. Sysmanek's?
I believe I did ask one of my supervisors, Laura Guadalupe, if she could recommend him. I told her about the office and asked her if she knew anything about him, and she said that she had seen him.
And did she give him a positive recommendation?
Yes, she did.
Had you, prior to the time that you called his office, had you had occasion to see any of his advertising, yellow pages information, or anything else other than the sign out in front of his office?
I believe, no, sir.
What was the date of your very first contact with Dr. Sismanic's office?
It was on August the 2nd.
And was that contact an in-person visit, a telephone call, or
It was an
something
in-person
else?
visit. I stopped there on an afternoon break.
What time of day? As best you can recall.
I would say it was probably around 2:30, 3 o'clock.
And you were on a break from your employment?
That's correct.
How long did it take you to walk from the DMV office over to Dr. Sismanic's office?
A couple of minutes.
Were you in discomfort at that time from your back pain?
I was.
Were you working a regular shift?
That's correct.
Who did you see when you first visited Dr. Sismanic's office on August 2?
I saw a female receptionist.
Do you know that person's name?
No, I do not.
What did you tell that person when you first went into the office on August 2?
I asked her if what it would take to get an appointment with Dr. Sismanic.
And what did she tell you?
She told me that all I needed to do was to call and make an appointment.
Did you make an appointment at that time
No.
while you were in the office?
No, I did not.
Was anything else said between you and the receptionist on that occasion on August 2?
I believe she asked me if I had insurance, and I told her that I did, but that I intended to pay for the appointment by myself. And also, I believe we discussed the cost of an appointment. And she told me that the cost would be somewhere between $40 and $80.
Did you tell this female receptionist on this occasion what the nature of your complaints were?
I believe I told her that I had lower back pain.
Do you recall telling her anything more specific than that on that occasion about
No.
your condition? Did she say anything to you on that occasion about the nature of the treatment that might be administered?
She just said that I may have to have x-rays, and that would make a difference in the cost, upwards to $80.
Did she ask you to fill out any papers of any kind on that occasion?
No.
When you told her about, or she asked you about insurance, and you said you had some, but were going to pay cash for the appointment, did you in fact have insurance at that time?
Yes, I did.
Did you have insurance which you believed at that time would have provided coverage for this treatment?
No, I don't believe it would.
Was the insurance you had insurance that was provided by the state of California in connection with your employment?
That is true.
Do you have any other insurance other than what was provided to you by your employer?
For health insurance, no.
Was there any reason why you were unable to make an appointment while you were standing there in the office as opposed to calling for an appointment?
Well, I wasn't certain that I wanted to make an appointment at that point, so I just went in to check to see what procedure was necessary.
So you didn't ask at that time to make an appointment, you just took the information and then left?
That's correct.
When did you next call the office with respect to, well, when did you next contact the office in any respect?
I called the office on the morning of August the 4th and asked for an appointment.
And who did you talk to when you called?
I again talked to the receptionist.
Did you recognize her voice as being the same person that you talked to on August 2?
Yes, I did.
And did you make an appointment at that time to see Dr. Sosmanic?
Yes, I did.
And for what time?
For 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Was there anything else discussed between you and the female person in that phone conversation?
She told me to arrive a few minutes early so I could fill out medical forms. I'm not sure what she said, medical forms, but she said there were some forms that I should fill out.
Was there any discussion in that phone call about the nature of your condition, nature of your complaints?
No, I don't believe so.
Was there any further discussion in that phone call about the nature of the treatment that might be required?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was there any discussion at all, either in the meeting that you had with that woman on August 2nd or in the phone call on August 4th about the fact that you were an AIDS patient?
No, there was not.
Why is it that you waited from the afternoon of August 2nd until the morning of August 4 to call and make an appointment?
Because I was attempting to relieve the pain on my own rather than have to go to a chiropractor.
What, if anything, were you doing to attempt to relieve the pain on your own?
Hot water baths.
Did the hot baths provide you any relief?
No.
Why was it, if you can articulate a reason, why was it that you attempted to try to treat this discomfort yourself rather than immediately seeking the assistance of a chiropractor?
I watch my budget.
Did you have any communications with anyone else between the time that you talked to Laura Guadalupe about Dr. Sosmanic? Did you have any conversations with anyone else about Dr. Sosmanic or his reputation or his standing in the community between the time that you first encountered your back problem at the end of July and when you went in to see him on August 4?
None that I'm aware of.
Tell me then, Mr. Walsh, what occurred when you went into Dr. Sosmanic's office on the afternoon of August 4?
I walked into the office and about 15 minutes early, 20 minutes early from the appointment, as I was requested. I filled out, or she handed me some forms to fill out. Again, she asked me if I had insurance, and I told her that I did have insurance, but that I was not going to turn it in on my insurance, that I was going to pay cash. I filled out the forms as requested and handed them back to her in the receptionist booth. And I believe at that point she told me that she would give those forms to the doctor and that he would be with me shortly.
All right. We'll stop there for the moment. When this person, well, strike that. Am I correct in assuming that this person who handed you the forms is the same female person that you had seen on August 2?
I believe it was.
When that person handed you the form to fill out, did that person say anything to you about how to fill the form out or what information to include or what not to include?
No, she did not.
She just said, here's a form, fill it out.
She seemed to be more concerned about whether I had insurance or not.
But in answer to my question with respect to the form, she didn't tell you, to your recollection, she didn't say anything to you other than here's a form, please fill it out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, the form itself that you were asked to fill out.
Excuse me, Jim, if you're going to go on to the form now, we're essentially our Greek break time.
All right, that's fine. I'm willing to take a break now. We can go off the record.
Okay.
On the record.
Can I have your camera cover on?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, back on the record. All right, Mr. Walsh, right before the recess, we were talking about the document that you filled out. As I understand it from your testimony before the recess, the woman gave you a document, you filled it out, gave it back to her, and then she went, presumably, to talk to someone in the back office. Is that correct?
I believe she told me she was taking the document back to the doctor.
Okay. Let me give you a document that I've marked as Exhibit C. It's a 2-page document, and ask you if you can identify that as the document that you filled out in Dr. Sismanic's office.
That is correct.
Right,
Is
and
that the copy from our file or
No, it's not.
yours?
That's an extra copy, and just so the record is clear and there's no mistake, that document is an exact copy of documents from your file that previously have been marked as Exhibits B-42 and B-43. Just so it's clear, this document, as it was given to you by the woman in Dr. Sismanic's office, and at the time you filled it out, was it a 2-page document or a single page printed on both sides?
I believe it was a 2-page document.
Also, let me ask you, it's getting slightly ahead of the story, but let me just ask you, whether or not you have possession of, you or your attorneys have possession of the original document, that is, the original as, that actually bears your handwriting and your signature.
I believe I do not.
And is that the true, counsel, to the best of your knowledge?
We do not have it.
All right, let me ask you some questions about the contents of this document. You can take a look at it as you wish. First of all, am I correct that you actually filled that document out in Dr. Sismanic's office on August 4?
That is correct.
First of all, let me ask you a general question about the information pertaining to this document. Mr. Walsh, can you state to me at this time that all of the information that's contained on this document is, in fact, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
I'm going to ask you several specific questions about information that's contained on the document. On the first page, where it says up near the top under insurance information, name of insurance company, you have the words HealthNet written. Was that the name of the plan that you belonged to through your employment at the Department of Motor Vehicles?
That is correct.
Next, 2 lines down, you have written after the question, which reads, quote, is your condition due to an accident or illness, end of quote, you have written the word, quote, stress, unquote. What did you mean to convey when you wrote that word on this form?
That I was under stress at that point, nervous stress.
Okay. And were you intending to convey that the nervous stress that you just described was causally related to your back pain, in your opinion, at that time?
Yes.
Further down on the document, still under what appears to be the heading of insurance information, you were asked whether or not you had had a similar condition in the past, and you have written, if I'm reading correctly, yes, years ago. First of all, is that what it says?
Yes.
And where you have written yes, years ago, were you intending to describe what you testified to earlier here this morning regarding the occasion of back pain that you'd had in Kansas several years before?
That is correct.
Were you intending to describe any other episode of back pain other than the one which you previously addressed here this morning?
No.
Under the heading further down on that page, there's a heading with respect to drugs or medications that you were taking at the time you filled out this document. And you have checked off the box, or have put a check in the box where it says tranquilizers. Do you see that?
That's correct.
What tranquilizer drugs or medications were you taking at the time that you went in to see Dr. Sismanek?
I was taking a tranquilizer called Transine.
And was that a tranquilizer that's purchased over the counter, or was that by prescription?
By prescription.
Who had prescribed that tranquilizer for you?
Dr. Matthews.
Who is Dr. Matthews?
He is my physician.
In San Diego?
That's correct. I'm not certain whether he prescribed that to me at that time or not. I also had a script at one point from a doctor in San Francisco, but I'm not sure whether that one that I took at that time was Dr. Matthews or not, or whether it was a previous physician.
Had you seen any other physician or healthcare professional other than Dr. Matthews in San Diego prior to your seeing Dr. Sismanek?
No.
Further down on this particular form, there is a question which reads, quote, have you ever had any mental or emotional disorders, end of quote. There are 2 boxes, one for yes and one for no, and then there's a line for when. And you have written the words stress at present. Do you see that?
That is correct.
Did you consider that at this time on 8/4/88 that you were suffering from any mental or emotional disorder?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to discern what mental or emotional disorders are other than the stress.
Well, again, I'm just asking you a question regarding your frame of mind at the time that you filled this form out. And as you felt about yourself and as you considered yourself, and I'm not asking for a medical diagnosis or professional opinion, but did you consider at that time that you were suffering from any mental or emotional disorder?
No.
Why did you write the words stress at present after the question when?
Because I felt that I was under stress.
And the source of the stress, did you consider it was anything other than what you previously testified here to this morning?
I've considered it primarily as moving to a new city.
And I take it that you also considered the stress to in some way be related to the fact that you testified to earlier that a number of your friends and acquaintances in San Francisco had died over the prior months.
That is correct.
The stress that you were feeling in early August of 1988, did you consider that to be mental stress or physical stress or both?
Both.
What kind of doctor is Dr. Matthews?
He is my primary physician.
Do you know what his specialty is?
I believe he specializes in treating AIDS patients.
Do you know if he has any other, is he board certified, do you know, in any particular medical specialty?
I'm afraid
Is
I
it
don't.
is it an internist or orthopedist or anything of that nature, or do you know?
I am not certain. I believe it's an internist, but I'm not certain.
And where is Dr. Matthews' office located?
It's on 4th Avenue in the Hillcrest area.
Does he have is he associated with a group of medical doctors?
I believe he's associated with the UCSD Medical Center. I believe he's on the board.
When did you first see Dr. Matthews when did you first see Dr. Matthews?
Probably a couple of weeks before I went to see Dr. Sismanic
And what was the reason you went to see Dr. Matthews?
to make contact with a physician here in San Diego and also have a checkup at that point.
Who gave you Dr. Matthews' name?
That came through my health insurance referral.
Who specifically, or how specifically did you get the name?
I believe they gave me a list of physicians that were available to me in San Diego.
And who's they?
My health insurance. My office supervisor has a list that they give through my employment package.
Okay, so it was actually someone employed at the DMV?
That's correct.
Was this Laura Guadalupe or someone else?
I believe that would have been through another supervisor, Phyllis Rios.
And it was your understanding that this list of names that Phyllis Rios has was a list of names that had been approved or authorized by the HealthNet people?
That's correct.
When you talked to Phyllis Rios about getting a name of a physician to be your personal physician to give you an examination, did you discuss with Phyllis Rios or anyone else at the DMV that you were an AIDS patient?
Not at that time, no.
So when you got the name and originally went to see Dr. Matthews, you had not specifically disclosed the fact that you were an AIDS patient in seeking this reference?
No, I did not.
Had anyone else spoken to you about Dr. Matthews, or did you know that in any way, before you went to see Dr. Matthews that in fact he was a person who was experienced in or had expertise in treating AIDS patients?
Objection, compound. You may attempt an answer.
Okay.
I believe that I did discuss it with John DeBelka.
Did Mr. DeBelka have knowledge of Dr. Matthews?
Apparently so.
And you learned that before you went actually to see Dr. Matthews?
That's correct.
How many times did you see Dr. Matthews before you went to see Dr. Sismanic?
Once that I'm aware of.
when you answer the way you just did, are you suggesting that there may have been other visits and you just don't recall them at the present time?
I believe at that point I'd only seen Dr. Matthews at one time. I go to see him on a regular basis, so it's kind of hard to say how often. At that point in time, I think it was just the initial interview shortly after I'd moved here.
When you went to see Dr. Matthews on that occasion, and before you went to see Dr. Sismanek, did Dr. Matthews give you any additional information regarding your condition by way of diagnosis, different from or beyond what you had been told in San Francisco?
Objection, compound. You may attempt an answer.
It was, I'm not certain at that point, but it was around that point that there was a discussion about me going on AZT.
Okay, just to break it down in a little more detail, the thrust of my first question that I just asked you was any discussions or information that you gained from Dr. Matthews at that time about your condition, that is diagnosis, putting treatment aside for a moment. Did you learn anything more about your condition from Dr. Matthews upon his examination?
It's basically what I already knew.
Then the next direction of my questioning was with respect to the question of treatment, and I wanted to ask you whether or not Dr. Matthews at that time suggested to you any course of treatment that he thought you should consider or that he would recommend.
I don't think at that time, no.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that there had been some discussion about possible treatment with AZT. What is your best recollection regarding when that discussion first came up?
I don't remember if it was at that initial interview or was it an interview after that. I'm afraid I don't know when that took place, but he did discuss somewhere beginning about that time of putting me on one of the studies that was available.
Do you recall any other prescription that Dr. Matthews gave you on your initial visit? Did he prescribe any drugs other than possibly being involved in the prescription for Transin? Did he give you any prescription for drugs or exercise or other kind of course of treatment that he thought would be good for you?
Not that I remember.
Back to Exhibit C for a moment with respect to the information that you filled out and gave to the woman in Dr. Sismanek's office. Back up in the top half of the first page of this document, there's a question which reads, "What is your major complaint?" And you have written, "Pain in lower back, radiates down both legs." First of all, did I read correctly what you wrote?
That's correct.
And does that accurately describe the nature of the complaint that you had at that time when you went in to see Dr. Sismanek?
Yes, it does.
Now, the next line reads, "Other complaints," and you didn't put any information down there in response to that inquiry, correct?
That's correct.
Now, was there any reason why you did not, in that line on this form, indicate anything with respect to your condition as an AIDS patient or a person suffering from Kaposis sarcoma?
In my opinion, that had nothing to do with my condition for seeing Dr. Sismanek.
Do you recall going through that thought process at the time you filled this document out?
Yes, I did.
And was that your opinion and disposition generally with respect to the filling out of this document, that it was not pertinent anywhere on this document for you to disclose the fact that you were an AIDS patient.
That's correct.
Over on the second page of this document, there is a area on the document under the heading Symptoms, where you are asked to check off any of a number of symptoms that were pertinent to your physical condition. And you have checked off low back pain, pain down both legs, and then under the category general, you have checked off depressed and loss of sleep. Now, first of all, with respect to those two items under general, depressed and loss of sleep, did you consider at the time you filled this document out that those two symptoms were related to your low back pain?
Yes, I did.
Did you also consider that those symptoms were related to anything else that was going on in your life at that time?
Yes, I did.
And in what respect?
Because I was, because I am an AIDS patient, there was some depression, and also due to the fact that I was moving into a new situation and was stressed out about that.
Then you indicate that you had had a chest x-ray about 2 weeks prior to this occasion, and am I correct in assuming that that chest x-ray was in connection with your visit to Dr. Matthews earlier in July?
That is correct.
Was that chest x-ray actually taken in Dr. Matthews' office?
In the building.
Did Dr. Matthews subject you to any other x-rays other than a chest x-ray?
I don't believe so.
Dr. Matthews say anything to you about why he was having a chest x-ray done?
It was standard procedure for a new patient.
When you visited Dr. Matthews' office earlier in July, were you suffering any back pain at the time that you visited Dr. Matthews?
No, I was not.
Okay. Back to the sequence of events. You filled out this form, you signed it on both page 1 and page 2, correct?
That is correct.
And you gave it back to the female employee who, as I understand your testimony, said that she was going to take it back and talk to the doctor?
Yes, sir.
Did she then leave the room where you were?
She was not actually in the room with me at that point. She was in a receptionist booth type thing, and I handed it through the window to her,
Okay.
and then she disappeared from view.
Okay. Do you in fact know if she went and talked with Dr. Sismanic?
It was my understanding that's where she went.
And you gained that understanding from her comment?
That's correct.
And again, just I don't want to be nitpicking, but I want to try to be as precise as we can. Her comment to you was that she was going to take the form and talk to the doctor?
As best as my recollection, it was something along that line, that she was going to take the form back to him and would be back with me.
To your knowledge, were there any other chiropractors or healthcare practitioners working in Dr. Sismanic's office at that time? To your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
How long was the female employee gone before she returned to your presence?
A matter of a minute or 2 minutes.
And were you seated or standing during the time that she was gone?
I believe I was seated.
And I'm correct that you did not see who she talked to?
No, I did not.
And am I also correct that you did not hear any conversation that took place between this woman and whoever it was that she went to see?
No, I did not.
when the woman returned, I assume she returned back to the window where she had been when you gave her the form.
Actually, I believe she came out of the door of the reception area.
Into the waiting room?
Into the waiting room.
And what did she say to you? And here again, obviously you can only give me your best recollection, but I'll caution you to try to be as precise as you can in repeating to me precisely what she said as best you can recall.
I'm not sure I can give you a verbatim what she said, but I believe at that point she questioned me again as to whether I had insurance, and I told her that yes, I did have insurance, but again, that I was going to be paying for this myself, and I don't remember if she had the form with her or not at that point. I believe it was at that point that she mentioned something about why I had had an x-ray done, and I told her that I was under a regular doctor's care and that he had done that as part of my a checkup.
All right, I'm going to stop you there then for a second. Again, then your best memory is that in this first conversation when she returned from seeing whoever it was she saw in the back office, in that conversation she asked you why you had had an x-ray done.
That was the second conversation I had with her, and I believe it was during that second conversation that came up.
Okay, now I want to make sure we don't get mixed up on the sequence of events. When you say it was the second conversation, am I correct that the first conversation is when she gave you the form and you gave it back to her, and the second conversation that we're referring to now is when she first came back from the back room?
That is correct.
And as I understand it from the testimonies you just gave, your response to her question was to state that you were under the care of a doctor, and that this x-ray was taken in connection with an examination.
That's correct.
Okay, what else, if anything, was said in that conversation?
I don't remember anything else being said other than I believe she made a comment about the insurance again, as to whether I was sure I didn't want to turn it in on my insurance. But I don't remember specifically how that was stated. And then she again said that she would be back with me in a minute and went back to the doctor again. I assume she went back to the doctor again.
Right. In that regard, she said she'd be back in a minute, or did she say, I'm going to talk to the doctor? Do you recall what she said at that time?
I don't recall specifically her saying that she was going back to the doctor directly, but she did not go to the receptionist area again. She went back into the back office again with the papers.
And again, when she went back to the back office, now for the second time, did you see who she went to talk to?
No, I did not.
Did you hear anything that was said between her and this other person?
No, I did not.
Were you seated in the reception area at this time while she was gone?
That is correct.
How long was she gone?
Again, a matter of a couple of minutes.
she came back the second time, did she come back into the reception area or to the receptionist window?
She came back into the reception area.
Perhaps my question wasn't as clear as it should have been. You said she came back into the receptionist area.
She came back into the room that I was in.
The waiting room.
The waiting room.
Okay. All right, again, and I'll just, again, caution you to try to give me your very best recollection as precisely as you can in terms of what was said. What did she say to you, as you best recall, when she first came back into the room this second time?
See, this is the third time she came back into the room.
Well, again, I don't
remember.
I mean, you say third time she came back in the room.
Or,
The sequence is the first time you talked to her, she was at the receptionist window and you
that's
filled
correct.
out the form. Then the second time you talked to her is when she came into the waiting room. And now the third time you talk to her is when she comes back in the waiting room a second time.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
I believe that's true. Let's see, I handed her the forms. She came back to me and discussed insurance again. And she left. And then she came back the third time, right? Oh, so that would be, I met with her a third time.
Okay.
At that point, then she again questioned, I think she asked me about my insurance again. And I told her that yes, I did have health net insurance, but that once again I was not going to be relying on my insurance, that I intended to pay for it myself by check.
All right, what was next said?
I believe it was at this point that she asked me why I was under a regular doctor's care, and I told her that I was under constant medical attention, and
That you were or were not?
was.
Okay.
And I think it was at this point that she became insistent as to why I was going to a doctor regularly, as I had indicated. And I just told her that I was under a regular doctor's care constantly, and she turned away from me and headed back for the door. And I think it was at that point I told her as if she must know that I was an AIDS patient, and that's why I was under constant doctor care.
So, as I understand it, your best memory is that you had an exchange where she asked you why you were under doctor's care. You responded to her that you were under regular or constant care, and then she began to leave without any further inquiry. She began to leave, and then you added a comment to the effect that you were under regular doctor's care because you were an AIDS patient.
That's correct, as far as I can remember.
Did she respond in any way to your statement that you were under doctor's care because you were an AIDS patient?
She turned and looked at me and said, "Okay."
And then she continued out of the office and into the back room?
That's correct.
With respect to the discussions that you had with her about your insurance, and it's been mentioned, I think, 3 times, in any of those discussions up to this point, in including this conversation, where you talked about insurance, did she indicate to you that there would be any problem with your paying by check or paying directly and not through the insurance company?
No, she did not.
Did you gain anything from her as to why she was concerned enough to ask you 3 times whether or not you wanted to bill it through your insurance?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, I'm just asking whether there was anything she said during any of these conversations that gave you any information about why she was concerned enough to ask you 3 times whether or not you wanted to bill it to your insurance company.
I believe that she just mentioned that that she could bill it to my insurance. I don't know that there was any specifically reason why that she was so interested in it.
Okay, again, how long was she gone?